podcast, and of course, with this is a casual conversation. And right now, I'm joined with by Karen of the Black Guy Who Tips podcast, uh, one of the hardest working couples in podcast land. And I'm telling you, they're so prolific. If you haven't heard of the Spann, I mean, not the Spann Report. What the fuck am I thinking about? If you haven't heard of the Black Guy Who Tips podcast, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, man. They're doing it so big, and I'm really glad to have Karen here discussing these topics here with me today. So how you doing today, Karen?
I'm doing good. How about you, Mr. Spann?
I'm good, chilling out. I'm chilling on a Saturday, letting my body rest. I love Saturdays. I just sit around, play games, and just let my body rest. But I'm really excited to have you on here today.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, it's been a really big couple weeks as far as issues dealing with women and relationships and things like that. We're just gonna get right into it. The street harassment. Okay, like we were talking a little bit before we got on air and stuff, and one of the things I mentioned to you was the fact that like with street harassment, there are a lot of women who simply don't know what street harassment is. How would you define street harassment for those who aren't aware?
My thing is, when it comes to street harassment, a lot of women consider it just life. Like, this is just how it is. So, and they may not really have a word for it. They might consider it annoying, or that's just what dudes do, versus saying, hey, I don't have to deal with this and I don't have to put up with this. When it comes to street harassment, it's very hard to get a definition for it, because for every woman, her level of harassment varies. Depending on what woman you ask. For some women, it's smacking her on the ass. For other women's, it might be catcalling. For other women's, it might be you just look at them, in an inappropriate way. For other women, it might just be they might not feel comfortable around a group of men. Men might not even be in their vicinity. They just panic, so it's just, when it comes to it, it's different levels to it, and each woman is different, and each woman has her own right to define her level of harassment. I think the problem when it comes to street harassment is that dudes don't know what that woman's code of conduct is. So they just blanket all women the same, and you get varying different response because all women are not the same, and I know a lot of dudes be like, well, I just asked her to smile. How do you know she wants to smile? How do you know the last dude that told her that didn't turn around and punch her in the face because that was just enough to get her attention off of what she was doing? You don't know. You're making the assumption that every woman is comfortable around you as a man, and I think a lot of dudes take it for granted, because most dudes do not have to deal with sexual harassment, street harassment, just harassment, period. The average dude does never have to deal with that. The only time it comes close to it, like if you talk to dudes, and there are a lot of dudes that are homophobic, and you talk to dudes about gay dudes, they'll be like, well, because this is something that Brandon from Where's My 40 Acres brought up, and when he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, it just made my mind open. He was like, when you talk to dudes about homophobic, they'd be like, well, what if he's bigger than me? What if he's stronger than me? What if he does this? What if he does that? And they was like, well, what if he doesn't? And that fear that you have, isn't that the same way that you treat women? But you don't understand that fear because you're never on the opposite side of it. So because you are never in a place where you ever feel uncomfortable, because you're never in a place where you constantly, from the time you leave your house to the time you return to your house, and even sometimes in your own home, you never have the fear, I might be raped, I might be punched in the face, I might be kidnapped. You never have a fear. From the time a woman leaves her house to the time she comes back home, be it to her car, be it at her job, she's constantly on alert. Now, she might not appear to be on alert, but she's constantly on alert. And a lot of times dudes just take for granted that every woman is just open to all these invitations, when a lot of times she just want to eat her fucking lunch. She doesn't care about you.
Right.
But a lot of times these dudes think they're more important than whatever that woman's doing, and because they want to holler at her, they think that she's obligated to take the time to speak to you when she's not obligated to.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you say that. It almost reminded me, just a minute of, it used to be a skit. Chris Rock used to do this skit about anytime a man's being nice to you, he's just offering dick. And like that whole idea of, telling a woman to smile and everything, opening doors. Really, a lot of times he's opening the door to kind of take a look at that ass. He's not really concerned about whether or not you really get in safely or not. Just a whole lot of the little things, these little subtle things that men do where they think they're being chivalrous and really they're just being a bit undercover in how they objectify a woman, so to speak.
And the thing is, Mr. Spann, there are good men out there that literally do these things and there's nothing sexual attached to it. But there are so many people that fuck it up for those men. More dudes approach women inappropriate than approach them appropriately. So for the average woman, she's like, it's not fucking my own, but it's like I have to constantly be on guard because I don't know if you're going to be like the next one. I don't know, and I can't tell the difference between a good one and a bad one. People don't want to admit that, but that's not me. I can't tell the difference.
Yeah,
Coming from a woman's perspective, she can't tell the difference.
Now, how much of that do you think is a male, like, not necessarily knowing or conscious of it? You know what I mean? As like, how much of it is like a guy playing the averages? Like, he's done this all his life. He thinks this is the way to get a woman to respond to him. How much of that do you think is behind a lot of that?
I think, Mrs. Spann, my personal opinion, I think a lot of it stems just down to the way male and females, straight males and females are taught how to interact with each other. This starts very, very young at social ages, like hide and go get it. The dudes run, they chase the girl. Dudes are never taught, hey, respect that girl. They're never taught, hey, she might have an opinion. That, if she says no, keep trying. She is not the fact that she might not be interested in you, not the fact that she might not want you. They're not really taught that. They're not really, taught to look at females as equal. But women, on the other hand, are taught if something happens to you, it's always your fault. If something happens to you, what did you do? What did you wear? What did you have on? Where were you at? Were you drunk? Everything, society always pushes everything towards the woman, and little boys and men are never taught that you are in control of your actions too. Like, that's never taught. That they're never taught to have self-control. So when they're raised, they almost feel obligated to sex or obligated to you, because if I took the time to buy you a drink, you owe me pussy. If I took the time, to open up the door, I have the right to look at your ass. If I took the time to do this, there's an obligation to your body. But men fail to realize you don't have an obligation to her body. You really don't. But a lot of dudes really think that they have this obligation, and a lot of that is from society and just the way men and women are just taught very differently about sex and sexuality. And a lot of dudes are never taught not to rape, but you teach women how protect yourself from being raped. But nobody ever sits down with dudes and have a real man sit down and be like, hey, dog, no means no, and if she can't respond, it's a motherfucking no.
Yeah. Now, excuse me. One of the things I wanted to ask you was whether or not you had any scary experiences with street harassment. What was something that may have happened to you, dealing with this issue?
Well, I'm down south, so it's a tidbit different. Up north and in other places where they have like subways and trains and things where
we ain't got that in Detroit.
Well, yeah, we ain't got that in Detroit. But I know, like, if you go more like towards New York and things like that, where you almost are forced to get out and be in the street. Yeah. That's a little different than, down here versus we're more of a car culture. So for me, harassment is just a tidbit different. It's funny, I've been more car harassed. I know that might sound silly, but I've been more car harassed. I would be driving, like if it's hot in the summertime, I roll my windows down, I'd just be driving and not paying no attention. Then, hey girl, and I'm looking like, who is hollering at me? I got vehicles, like, and you walking. Why would I stop my vehicle, turn around and talk to you? You have no wheels, dog. Like, to me, my mind, I get more of that, or either. The thing that really, really, I think one of the most frightening incidents that I have, and a lot of times dudes don't think twice about this, is if I'm by myself. One time I was a teenager. I was by myself and I was at a stoplight, and this group of 5 dudes put in the car right beside me.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen them at the corner of my eye. And I was sitting there and they were across from me. And I turned the music up. I tried to pretend like I was on my telephone. Dudes, we do this as tactics to ignore your asses. Okay, I'm just letting you know this. Like every time a group full of dudes, it's more you than me. So I automatically go in fight or flight mode. And so they did everything. They blew the horn. They hollered. They did everything short of literally getting out of the car.
Mm.
And I almost said, if the light was clear, I would have ran it. Like literally ran the light just to get away. Because it's just one of those things where you trying to holler at me is making me feel uncomfortable, but because you really don't care about how comfortable or uncomfortable I'm feeling, you think it's cool to do this. And I think that for me, that's scary. And also I had 2 more incidents. I had another incident where, now this one was strange. I had an incident where it was at night and I was on my way home. And I'm very, very friendly. So a lot of times when people look, I smile because I don't want people to think I'm trying to attack, especially being a black female too. So I do understand I am black and I am a female. And I always take that in consideration when I'm in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a stoplight and this dude pulled up beside me. He was a white dude. And I looked up at him and I smiled and I looked straight and I didn't say nothing else to him. And sometimes you have an inner voice that tells you something ain't right.
Yeah.
So something inside of me say something ain't right. Something say don't go straight home. I say, okay. So I pulled off, he pulled off. And he started following me, which really made me panic. So then once he started following me, I said, oh, I think he's following me. So what I did, I cut down into a neighborhood. And he cut down into a neighborhood behind me. I was rolling all through the neighborhood. He rolled all behind me, but it just so happened I knew the neighborhood very well. So I started cutting back and forth and around, and I lost him and pulled out on the other side and went home. And I told my husband about it. And I was thinking to myself, oh, my God, what would have happened if he could have stopped my car, stopped my vehicle, or got me outside of that car? Like as a woman, these are things that you live with every day. And I think another time when I was at a school at Federal State, it just so happened that same thing. It's just me and vehicles. I feel bad for women that are physically out in the open. A lot of my harassment happened in vehicles. So I was at a light, same thing, and these dudes was beside me trying to holler, and I didn't pay no attention. I went, they went. I started speeding, they started speeding. We got up to like 60, 65 miles an hour, and I really just floated. I started going like 80 or 90. I was like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're not going to follow my black ass.
Right.
You know, and it's just one of those things where I think that because society has always treated women as less than, we're never equal to. I don't want to be a man. I just want respect. Sometimes I think men miss that. I do not want to be a man. Being a man is just from a straight female perspective. Being a man is a very, very hard job, and especially being a black man in America is a very, very hard job. You are black and you are a male, and society constantly demeans you and degrades you on every end. And that's not something, those are not shoes that I ever want to walk in. But at the same time, I am here to love and support, but I don't want a black man looking at me as less than him because of the things that he has to deal with. So a lot of men deal with this outside pressure and then come home and then bring that to their woman because he feels like, well, since I've been, degraded, I can degrade you. And that's where a lot of abuse comes in the home.
Yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you, we talk about this a lot. Like I've seen this conversation had a lot on Twitter, and it's also had a lot on shows like yours, other podcasts. We're talking about it here on the Spann Report podcast. But how often do you think these conversations are had outside of these mediums, like where folks are just sitting around talking to their people about their experiences with this?
Truth be told, they don't.
Yeah.
Truth be told, there are hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of women all around the world that have been abused that nobody will ever know but her and the person that sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
For several reasons, because women are shamed, they're degraded, they're told that they're lying, especially if it's date rape, especially if it's their husband, especially somebody that they've been intimate with in the past. That's how most of these incidents happen. Every now and then you might get the boogeyman that jumps out the trees. That stuff is real. But most of the time it's people that have access to her. The easiest access to her is where a lot of these things happen. And when you say my daddy, my cousin, my brother, my uncle, my friend, my boyfriend, my husband, it becomes a problem. And especially in the black community, where we're big into that, don't put our business out in the street. That's a very old school mentality that has crippled the black community, because we do have problems. We do have issues. We do have things that need to be addressed. And when you start bringing these things out, everybody wants you to sit down and shut up, even other people that have been victimized, because in their mind, that they've justified why it happened to them. They have come to the conclusion that they're 100% at fault, and no matter what they did, they are to blame, because society is designed where women or victims, men or women, victims, are always to blame at being sexual assaulted or abused or harassed.
Yeah, yeah. Now, switching gears just a little bit. Stephen A. Smith has found himself in a bit of some hot water over comments that he made about domestic violence. He was just suspended this week after issuing an apology on air and everything. Do you think he should have been suspended for the comments that he made on First Take?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the thing about it is that you get paid to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole purpose on being on that is dialogue and dialect and language. You get paid to articulate yourself. That's why you're on television. There are certain words, there are certain phrases that you just shouldn't use. And when you say provoked and you don't explain, you really don't go into details. And in fact, the biggest issue that I have is that he started there, but that was not the question. The question is whether or not Ray Rice should have been suspended for 2 days. That was the question. But you went on a tangent which was separate and had nothing to do with what you were originally asked.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that what me and Roger talked about this. The thing is that a lot of black people really need to educate themselves on what they can and cannot say in a public forum. What you say to your friends, your mama, your daddy, your cousin in social media is a whole nother thing. But what you say on a platform where you talk to millions of people that all don't have the same background as you, and people that have very, very, very loud voices, and people that will call and get you fired and all that stuff, when you're speaking to those type of people, you can't be ignorant. You just can't. Because they're not going to want to hear I'm sorry. They're not going to want to hear all your excuses. And also, the thing also with him, yes, he should have been suspended too for the fact that he doubled down on Twitter. That was a problem. It's bad enough that you said it. If he would have said it and not went on Twitter, it probably wouldn't have been a problem. But for the fact that you said it and then you go on social media and you double down, it becomes a problem. Because when you say provoke everybody, there's different levels of provoke. It's provoke her rolling her eyes at me. It's provoke her, my dinner's not warm enough. It's provoke, she has a gun to my head. What's your definition of provoke? And when you say provoke, women, because women at a larger scale are abused at a much higher rate than males. Not that males are not, women are. And most of these affect women. Women will start saying, hey, you know what? I got a short skirt on. Did I deserve to be raped? Did I deserve to be punched? Did I deserve to be beat? It's my fault. And the sad part about it to me is that all these dudes jumped to his defense when he was wrong. He was wrong. He was just wrong. That you get paid for language. This is your job. Like, I could see if it was somebody like me or Roger or something like that. That's a completely different thing. We're not on national television. We're not getting paid by ESPN. And ESPN is not obligated to employ you. The thing is that they extend a contract to you with all these stipulations in it. And if you do anything to make them look bad, they're not obligated to have you work there. They're not obligated to have you still employed with them. Who are these people that think that you can go out on your job and just do whatever you want and then be like, nah, you can't fire me? That company, if you become bigger than the company, you got to go.
Oh, yeah. I've said that to quite a few people. Like when they were talking about the Anthony Cumia thing when folks are talking about First Amendment rights and the fact that he was fired because of the things that he said on Twitter. Folks got to talking about First Amendment, and it's like that you having the First Amendment doesn't it in no way ensures that you can't be fired for the things you say. If you messing up with the money, that's pretty much it. If you start messing with the money, they can let go of your ass no matter what it is you said. Your freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequences, and that's where I think a lot of folks get it messed up. They think that being able to say what you want is freedom from consequence. It really just keeps you from being hanged in the public square for talking shit about the government.
Right.
That's what
That's
it
what it
protects you
is.
from.
It's like you have the right to say what you want to say about Obama, about Bush, about these senators, about their congressmen. You have the right to say fuck America, burn the flag, and ain't nobody gonna show up at your door with no AK-47s and blow your brains out. That's the point of First Amendment, okay? What a lot of people gotta realize is that nobody stopped you from saying it. You said it.
Yeah.
Your First Amendment rights have not been violated. The problem is that we live in a society where when you say dumb shit, the consequences come a lot quicker because of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr. Like, people pick up on video snippets and clips, and a lot of people are not going to go back and take the time to really read the context of what you were saying. All they know is this is a hot button topic, and they mad and they angry, and they're gonna come after you. And at the end of the day, like I said before, your job is not obligated to employ you. I don't know where these people think that your job is obligated to keep you there no matter what you do or what you say. It does not work like this.
Yeah. Now it's interesting too, because of course after the whole brush up with Stephen A. and what he said, Whoopi Goldberg came out on The View and defended what it was that Stephen A. said and offered a defense, so to speak, of what Stephen A. said. And it was interesting because, like, in the crowd, there was a lot of applause coming from the crowd, and we all know that, like, The View has the vast majority of the people that watch The View or listen to The View are women.
Right.
So, do you think that Whoopi Goldberg should face a suspension, or if not, like, do you think that the message that she was saying was more palatable because it was coming from a woman?
I think that she gets a card, or just like it's coming from a woman type of thing. But yeah, because it's still just as offensive. I don't care if it's coming from a male or a female, because you have bought into the fact that if you put your hands on somebody, you deserve the right to get punched in the face, regardless if they're stronger than you, regardless if it's your fault or not. If they punch you, you must have done something to provoke them. She didn't use the same words, but technically that's what you're saying. Because it's very insulting to women that have been abused and assaulted, because it's one of them where I didn't do anything wrong. I just walked in the house, he had a bad day, he got drunk, he decided to give me a black eye, he decided to break my arm. I didn't do anything, but you're saying that I'm justified in getting my ass whooped, and just like he's wrong, she's wrong. But I think a lot of times certain things coming out of a woman's mouth has tendency to slide. Why? Because people don't take the things that women say very seriously. And there are a lot of women that still buy into the same point of view that these men do, that, hey, if you put your hands on me, I have the right to punch you in your motherfucking face. And I think that a lot of times children are raised, see, this go back to childhood. Children are, my mama didn't raise me like this, but children are raised, if somebody hits you, hit them back. There's households that are raised, children are raised, don't you come home until you whoop somebody's ass. Children are raised like this, okay? And so instead of you teaching your child, they hit you, why did you hit them back? Like, you begin to question your child. Okay, you got hit, why didn't you go get authority? Why didn't you come tell me? At an early age, you need to teach your children there are alternatives to violence, but you have households that teach their children to defend themselves and to fight. And not trying to be funny, there are situations where you may have to fight. I'm not saying that there never will be a situation where you have to fight, but for the average person, most people that fight by choice. Most people, when they decide that I want to whoop your ass, is because they made a conscious decision that this is what I'm gonna do today. But children need to be taught up, and they need to learn that this is not the proper way. But most adults do it by choice.
Yeah, I haven't had a fight like a physical fight since I was like 16 years old.
In
You know,
years. It,
it's been a long time. I probably could still do it, but chance like the way hell, I'm 34 years old now, man. Me trying to actually go out and get into a physical altercation with anybody, it just looks foolish as hell.
right. And the thing for me, Mr. Spann, as put like this, as you get older and the cost of that fight begins, now I got missing days out of work. Now my insurance rate's going. Once the reality of that stuff kicks in, when you be like, I got a motherfucking 401k. Why am I gonna be out here whooping your ass? This makes no goddamn sense. Like once you begin to get grown and you begin to have real responsibilities, you should be above that. But a lot of that mentality from childhood is still ingrained in the people. Like for me, I couldn't. Let me see. The last fight I was in, I was a child, and for me, and I will admit this. I am ashamed to say this, and I love my cousin to death. But I was completely wrong. I was a lot younger. What had happened was that I was at home with my cousin, and my mama said no little boys at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I was asleep, and I woke up, and some of my male friends that came to the house to see me, and my cousin was like, well, I scared them away with a knife. Like he didn't go outside, he just put a knife up to the window and was like, hey, y'all get out of here. And I looked at him and I got so upset at him. And this is the first and last time this ever happened to me. I seen red. Like I was just furious, because you know what, you're a child, you're young, you're dumb, they ain't had no business with their asses over there anyway. In fact, he doing me, he was actually doing me a favor, but I didn't look at it like that. And I got so mad, I balled my fist up. And this is the only time I've ever hit a man. And the second time. The first time I was younger than this, but the second time I hit older male, and I punched him square in his face. And I was just mad, and I punched so hard he seen stars. He didn't hit me back.
Mm-hmm.
But he told my mama she whipped my ass. She was like, you ain't got no business hitting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I ain't had no business doing it. And guess what? I was wrong. I was wrong. I apologized, and I told him I was sorry because I was wrong. And that's when I realized that you cannot let your anger overtake you so much that the rational thinking part of your brain escapes you. And that's what happens when you begin to see red, when you begin to get to the point where you can't hear anything around you and you almost like zone out the world.
Yeah,
you're in a very, very dangerous place. That's why for me personally, I try my best to stay out of the anger zone. Like, I may be I'm put like this, I know I emote loudly, I know I emote with passion, but a lot of times I'm not angry. It's just the way I come off. Like for me, it takes a lot for me to get to the point of anger, because I have learned over the years people die being angry. Mm-hmm. You get in the hands of somebody angry, they will take your life. You out here wanting to fight and box everybody. You don't know who has a weapon, who has a gun, who has a knife, who got jiu-jitsu training. You'll fuck around and be paralyzed and won't know what happened to you. You can't be out here boxing and fighting everybody.
Yeah. Now, how old were you when you had that? Those instances of, altercations with those males. How old were you?
I think the first one I was telling you about was with my cousin. I could have been about 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another fight when I was younger than this. We was at summer camp, and these boys was picking on my cousin, and I was the little girl who had a growth spurt before boys. The girls had their growth spurts, the boys had theirs later on. So, right. I'm like in the, 4th or 5th grade, and I'm like the tallest thing in the class. So, but at that time, I was like 5'2", what I am now. I haven't grown an inch since. Okay. Right. So I stopped growing, and all of a sudden, I'm like, well, goddamn, everybody taller than me now. But at that time, I was the tallest thing in the class. Okay. So, but I was never really brought up to fight. But this dude, he kept picking on my cousin, female cousin kept picking on her. I was like, dog, why don't you just leave her alone? He just kept picking on her. So I finally got mad. And I don't really know how to fight. I tell everybody I don't know how to fight. So I did the old school windmill where you just do one arm in front of the other, like in a circular motion. So I just did the windmill, just popped him off. I didn't know what else to do. I was like, you gonna leave her alone today? So I just went and met him. I was at summer camp, so I just went and met him all up and down the bleachers. I whooping his ass. He was smaller than me because, like I said, back then the girls was bigger than the boys.
Right.
He never hit me back. He just kind of balled up in the fist, and they had to pull us away. And like I said, I got an ass whooping for that too. And like honestly, truthfully, them are like the only two like physical altercations that I've ever got into. And both times, I can't speak for anybody else. I felt terrible.
Yeah.
I felt horrible because I should have had more self-control. And I learned that at a very early age, but a lot of people don't, and they consider this normal. And before we move on, something I want to go back. Also, Mr. Spann, sometimes I think men, especially straight male men, live in a bubble. They live in a bubble because they don't have to deal with harassment. And so a lot of women don't tell these men in their lives about the sexual assault and harassment that they've had, a lot of times for their own protection. Because a lot of men, if she tells you these stories, a lot of men don't know how to deal with her crying and the emotions. You know, they don't know what to say or how to respond. And a lot of them respond inappropriately. And a lot of times that woman listens to you when you talking with your boys, and you be like, oh, I hit a bitch. She hears that when you talking with your boys, you know, just in a casual conversation, you know, and you say things that you might not think twice about. She's listening to you. And I think that they don't realize that a lot of times women don't tell you because they don't want you judging them. They don't want you saying it's your fault. They don't want you, you know, coming at them in a manner to make them relive the situation over again, and you have no sympathy and empathy for them. And a lot of times I think a lot of men don't want to deal with the world is just that fucked up, so what did you do?
Yeah. You know what, it's funny you say that. Like I was talking to a sister of mine, like we go way back. We go back some years. And she was talking about like how she was in a fight with a dude. And like most of the time, like she was talking about, well, like, you know, I hit him, and this is something that they do regularly. Like they get into fist fights regularly, and I was wondering like how much of that was her feeling as if, you know, how much of that was her feeling as if she was like on some type of even playing field with him or something like that, because they talked about this all the time. Like, well, you get into a situation where somebody's like, you know, he gets a disrespect, so to speak. Like they get into this whole disrespect argument. He's disrespecting me, she's disrespecting me, and they the only way that they know how to handle that situation is to go into the fisticuffs. Both of them would fight. Like that's just how they deal with things. And yeah, I don't know what that shit just popped in my head. But like one of the things I wanted to ask you too though was like, what was your like the earliest memory that you have of witnessing domestic violence? Do you have any earliest memories of that?
I think the earliest sign I had of, and at the time I couldn't have been no more than 7 or 8, and I really didn't know what was happening at the time. And what was happening was that they were actually arguing with the shut door.
Okay.
And so it was like one of my aunts. And the thing about it, not only with that, you had to deal with the fact that he's Puerto Rican. Okay. And so a lot of my family would call him white boy. He would get angry with them because he's like, I'm not a white boy.
Okay.
And this was the first time for me I had to deal with racism. Like, you know me, at a really, really young age. I knew he looked different, but all I know is he's my uncle and he loves me. Like in my mind, you know, because you're a child, so you don't really look at race from the perspectives of adults that have been through. Because a lot of my family members are old enough to where they were here in North Carolina when they did the integration of schools, when blacks and whites first started going together. So they did with the race riots. You know, I have my aunt that raised me, you know, she was a child at the end of the Jim Crow laws. She can tell you about the black bathrooms and the white bathrooms. See, these were things I've never experienced because my whole life that I've been in school, it's always been mixed. Like right. I came around kind of years after the integration had happened. So in my mind, we all just went to school together, so I didn't think nothing of it. You know, so a lot of that kind of came to a forefront. And they were arguing about something, and I heard them, and then I think something happened and the door opened, and all I seen was him kind of on top of her, holding her down.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really see any physical, like, can I kind of explain, physical altercations.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of the things where I looked and I was like, that don't seem right, and I just kind of turned and walked away and didn't think anything of it. But it was never talked to me about. It was never addressed. Now, for me, I've had women in my family sit down and tell me some stories now, Mr. Spann. Like, I remember one of my aunts, her husband had got into it, and he had ended up beating her face up so bad that when they had went to the hospital, they would say the only way you would have had recognized her face was by her lips. It was like because he had beat her face in so bad. I've dealt with family members and the thing about it was that they used to, because I was the only child, so I hung around a lot of older people. Okay. And a lot of times I would be sitting and they would be talking around me, just assuming that I wasn't listening. And so they would, one of my aunts would tell me how one of her husbands abused her, and they was fighting about something, and he pushed off the porch and broke her arm.
Damn.
I would, sit around and, hear about some of my family members tell me how your husband would whip her ass and didn't want to fuck her. And she was like, I'm not turned on, but for some reason, with my ass turned him on, just the adrenaline. Because a lot of times it's more about power, having power over a person.
Yeah.
More than anything else. That's what it is. And just sitting and just listening to them tell these horrific broken bones, broken body parts, getting pushed off porches. And I remember at a really, really young age, I could have been no more than 9 or 10. I heard them talking about it, and I said to myself, I don't ever want a man to hit me. I remember saying that. I remember saying myself, and it was funny, but I said to myself, if a man ever hit me, I'd kill him. And I said that at that age, because just listening to their horrific stories, I was like, no. And when you sit down and talk to a lot of these women, Mr. Spann, a lot of times the false preconceived notions that people have about abuse that have never been abused are false. Because I've talked to some of them as I got older, just asked them about the situations, and a lot of them say it didn't start off like that. It was like he didn't walk in day one and punch me in the face.
Right.
They were saying it was a gradual thing where, one day it was verbal, then it went to a smack, then it went to a punch, then it went to a baby, I'm sorry, and I go back. Baby, I'm sorry, then I go back, or either they felt like, well, I have kids, I can't leave you, and all these other things that come up, and just the feeling of a shame and the feeling of not knowing where to turn to or who to turn to, or you go to people and people would tell them where you were, so they'll come and find you and whoop your ass and bring you back home, and it's just one of those things where it just breaks my heart, because when these women do decide to go get help, a lot of their friends and family are not helping them in the proper ways that they should, because most people feel like, well, they're married, or a lot of times they don't even let them know that there is abuse going on, so They don't know. Hey, you calling for your wife? Hey, yeah, she's over at such and such, and not realizing that you're running for your life. If people want to act like that this is not the big issue, well, if it's not, why do you have domestic violence centers? Why do you have I've heard of organizations where women have been abused and are running from their husbands so much that they change their identity of their children, and they keep them in hotels and float them all around the country to keep them away from crazy ass men that stalk them.
Mm-hmm.
I even had somebody in my family where his best friend ended up dying, and he would whoop his wife's ass all the time, and right before he got killed, she was going to go back to him. And it was just one of those things where you see it and nobody really talks about it. Nobody really talks about, and the thing is, I think society in general doesn't train people how to deal with it. Excuse me, and don't let them know there is help. And the thing about it is that because we live in a society of victim blaming, you have a lot of people that don't have sympathy and empathy because they went, why did you stay? You should have left. You deserve to get your ass beat. You stayed there. You know he was whooping on your ass. But what they fail to realize is a power thing. A lot of times they have techniques. First they get rid of all your friends. Then they get rid of all your family. A lot of times they keep you alone and by yourself to really get you to the point where you're helpless and you're hopeless. This is a technique that people that abuse people have, and the people that have never been abused really don't understand. And at the same time, if she gets to the point where she wants to get away, instead of you helping her, it's always her fault.
Mm-hmm.
Or his fault if it's a man.
Yeah. You know, it was funny because just going back, and I mentioned this on the other interview that I did with Ayana before, and you can check that out later on. But like the earliest memory that I have of domestic violence, I didn't actually see it happen. I just saw the end results of it. Was when my brother's father put his hands on my mama. And I remember I was maybe 5 or 6, and I just remember going to the hospital with my grandmother because when it happened, we went to my grandmother's house, and so I remember going to the hospital with my grandmother to go pick my mother up, and I just remember the neck brace that my mother was wearing. I remember both of her eyes were like really puffy and red, black, blue. And I remember at 5 years old, I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to fuck this dude up when I see him. At 5. Now, I know I can't do anything, but at that particular moment in time, at 5 years old, just like internalizing that, just seeing that, knowing that this man did this to my mama, like that at that particular moment in time was like, that isn't something that's supposed to happen. At 5, I knew that was wrong. And of course, my mother had always told me and my brother, you're not supposed to, put your hands on a woman, for no reasons at first. And we had another conversation when I got older. But, to see that really, really, really stuck with me. That, in any future, confrontations I may have with a woman, that putting my hands on her would be the utmost not thing for me to do, And I say it's strange though, because when I got a little bit older, I was about 16, and me and my mother were having a conversation, and I remember her telling me to not put my hands on a woman, but if a woman was to put her hands on me, that she wasn't respecting me as a man, and that I should treat her as such. I should kind of meet force with force type of thing. And that fucked me up too. Because I'm like, I remember when I was 5 and seeing what happened to her. So, how much, a lot of this is taught to us.
Right.
A lot of this is taught to us. And I don't think what I'm saying right now is even something unique. I think a lot of men have grown up single mothers who have maybe told them the same thing. That if she puts her hands on you, to knock her ass out. Unfortunately, a lot of dudes have been probably taught this very same thing, and it fucked me up that my mother said that to me at 16, knowing what I saw when I was 5. So, yeah, man, it's a trippy thing. We grow up with this. That's another thing too. I think it's ingrained in us because we've been taught since we were little, if somebody were to hit you, to hit them back. And even with the whole thing of women, if she goes so far as to do that, she's not respecting you as a man, and to treat her as such. We heard that with the guy with the Cleveland bus driver. Mm-hmm. When he uppercut that girl, he said, she gonna act like a man, I'm gonna treat her like one.
But she's not one. What about that? Don't people understand? It's just one of those things where it's several things here. People want to act like manhood is equal to violence, and it's not. A lot of men don't really understand what the true definition of strength is. Strength is being the stronger person, but knowing when, where, how, and why to exercise your strength, and knowing that being violent is the last resort.
All right.
But there's so many people who do not understand what the true definition of strength is. And also, the problem is that you got strength, but you don't have no love. A lot of people don't know the definition of love, Mr. Spann. Love is patient, love is kind, love is gentle, love cares. And a lot of people are raised, and they are not raised up in an environment that really shows them how to love themselves. If I don't love me, I cannot extend that out to anybody else.
Yeah.
If I'm a hurt and bruised individual, all I know how to do is hurt and abuse other people, because I have never been taught that this is not the proper way. And that's why a lot of people grow up thinking that it's normal to fisticuff in relationships. They grow up and in my definition, that is dysfunctional. It is dysfunctional for men and women to beat up on each other. It is dysfunctional, and it's not normal. If I got to live with somebody that I'm afraid that they're going to whoop my ass, I do not need to be with you, male or female. If I get angry enough, I feel like I need to put my hands on you, why is walking away always an option for a woman and never an option for a man? Like, men don't have self-control. Like, men are these wild beasts that do not know how to control their dicks in their hands. It's dumb.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense to me. And the thing is that when it comes to violence, a lot of people think they do violence first violence last.
Yep.
And that becomes a problem, and that becomes an issue, and they want to justify it, and by any means necessary. Because if they say that that's wrong, that means everything that they've been taught since a child is wrong, and it will crumble their world, because they don't want to have to deal with the reality that whoever taught you wrong. Because I got grown before I realized that some of the things I was taught was incorrect. Yep. And I had to look within myself and say, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. And because the thing about it is that it takes a lot of people maturing and doing a lot of self-reflecting, and that's something that people don't want to do. Instead of self-reflecting, men and women, as to why you do these things, because there's a lot of angry and broke people out there, instead of fixing why you angry, why you hurt, why do these things tick you off? Did your mama beat you? Did your daddy beat you? Instead of asking yourself why, you take that anger and you ball it up, and you ball your fist up and you pop her in the eye, because you don't want to deal with the reality of your anger, because you don't want to deal with the reality of your pain and your hurt. So you take it out on the person that you're supposed to love.
Yeah.
Men and women, and it becomes a bigger issue. If somebody's beating you, male or female, believe you me, whatever's happening in their life is bigger than them punching you. Yeah. Whatever's happening stems from something else, and you have to fix that problem if you want their actions to change.
Yeah, it's funny, because me and my girlfriend, we live together now. Mm-hmm. And I'm into guns. I go shooting and everything else. And she's here. So I remember I was telling folks, like some of my friends, some of my family, that I was really trying to get her into at least knowing how to operate the guns, because they're here. Not only that, when I'm not home, she would have something to protect herself with should something happen and I'm not here. Mm-hmm. And hearing folks talk about that might be a bad decision because she may use those on me. It was funny to hear that, because everything I'm doing was I would like to think was to prepare her to protect herself.
Right.
Even from me, if something should happen that way. I'm not anticipating anything like that happening, but even in the event that it God forbid does, that she has the tools to protect herself in any situation. And it was funny to me how, like, so many people were coming at me like, yo, man, that might not be the thing you should do, is to teach her how to use a gun. It's something that's really, really, really prevalent in our thought process. And I think it really does go all the way back to how we were brought up, our childhoods and everything.
Right.
Like I can remember like my Uncle Ronnie. I did a whole episode on how much, me and my Uncle Ronnie grew up. I grew to love him as I got older. But when I was a kid, I couldn't stand my Uncle Ronnie because of some shit he did to me as a kid. You know what I mean? I got whooped with a 2x4 as a kid because I didn't do something that he wanted me to do at that particular moment in time. That was fucking child abuse. Now, as we got older and we became men, so to speak, and I was able to tell him some of the things that I need to say, and maybe it was because I was physically able to tell him, and he couldn't really, do a whole hell of a lot about it. That probably, equalized that whole situation. But I think a lot of this is simply because a lot of us have grown up with this all of our lives, and we haven't really talked about this shit.
Nope. Not only do you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to address it. And also, especially black people, we don't believe in psychiatrists and psychologists. They will save your life. We live in a society where everybody wants to put their hands on it and pray it away. Okay, why can't I take that plus medication? Why can't I take that plus have somebody to talk to? Why does it have to be prayed away or nothing at all? Why can't all these things be in conjunction with each other to make me a whole human being? Because the thing about it, if you want to heal, you got to heal mind, body, and soul. It just can't be one piece, because they all work in conjunction, because that's what makes you you. Because what's the point if your mind is not right, you're still going to have the thoughts.
Yeah.
If your soul is not fixed, you're still going to have pain in the inside. You look down on your arm and you can still see the scars and the bruises and the cuts and the scrapes that somebody has put on you. That does not go away overnight, and it has to be addressed. Because the thing about it, and this is something that I've learned, Mr. Spann, when things happen to you, if you do not address them and you take them and you bury them, what you fail to realize is that when they come up, they're going to be twice as strong. Why? Because they've laid dormant and they've had time. And the thing about it is that when it comes back up, it's going to be worse. You might as well address it the first time. And the thing is, nobody wants to open up these doors. Why? Because you'll have to do that self-reflecting thing I talk about again. You have to look within the inside. You have to almost go back and dig into your childhood.
Yeah.
Because even me as an adult, there was things that my family members did to me that maybe I'm 36, maybe about 32, 33, that I just got to the point where I literally, truly forgave them. Truly forgave them. I had to stem back to my childhood. Why is it that when certain family members get around me, I get angry? Why is it that, I don't like to go to functions? Why is it? I really sat down and began to question myself, because you know what? I want to be a free human being. And a lot of times, you are not free as long as you feel trapped. You can trap yourself. Your abuser can be gone, but you can still keep yourself in them same bars. I was like, I am tired of being trapped. I am tired of allowing them to have more control over my life than me. I'm the one that got to live this life.
Right.
So I wanted to be literally free where I could be happy. A lot of people will never be free until they face the reality. And a lot of times, forgive. It does not mean forget. It does not mean that the pain will not be there, but you have got to get to the point where you forgive yourself, number one. And once you forgive yourself, everything else is a whole nother story. You can choose to opt not to forgive them or not. That's a whole nother thing. But you got to forgive yourself, because a lot of people sit around with this hurt and pain, assuming that everything that happened to them was their fault, when that's not always so. And back to your girlfriend, Mrs. Spann, a lot of times, a lot of people have a fear of empowering women. Like, for some people, that's the worst thing in the world. You give a woman power. How dare you do that, you progressive man? How dare you allow this woman to have rights and freedom? How dare you allow her to have a choice about her body? How dare you do that? And it's just one of those things where when you talk about guns, you make me think. Now, I ain't gonna lie, Mrs. Spann, I am petrified of guns. 100%.
Yeah, she was too. She is.
Petrified. I don't want them around me. Like literally, if I see, I'm out. Like literally, I'm out. Right. I don't want them, because I know they kill people, and I don't want. You hear too many stories about too many people get accidentally shot, didn't know it was a gun in the chamber or some bullshit like that. I'm good, So my mama had a gun the whole time. I didn't know where it was. I was like, she was like, don't show me where it is. Nope. I just take my black ass out and jump out the window. I'm good. Like, don't show me nothing. But the older I get, the more I'm gonna challenge myself, and when I do it, I'm gonna share it with everybody. I'm gonna actually go to like a gun range and like literally get to the point where I feel comfortable with a gun and know how to shoot a gun, because I never, like you said, and you never know where a situation may happen. I want to get to the point where I don't have this this fear that engulfs me so bad that you almost become paralyzed and you become helpless. And so that's my thing, when it comes about that gun thing. I think my person think it's a good idea, but like I said, this is just me, because also, Mrs. Spann, I think our generation is a completely different generation than our parents' generation. I think our generation is one of the first generations that kind of looks at men and women more of equal,
Yeah.
Versus a man's role, a woman's role, it's equal, because even, I bring this up, even with me and the situation here, I work. My husband stays at home, but he makes money off the podcast.
Right.
Dudes would be like, you work from home? He'd be like, yeah. She makes more money than you? He'd be like, yeah. And a lot of men's ego can't handle that. Well, guess what? That's our money. It doesn't matter who makes the most money. That's our money, But I think that a lot of people, whenever they look at that dynamic, they just always assume that the man is, quote unquote, supposed to be the breadwinner and all that stuff. But what you fail to realize is men don't want to accept this, but we live in a society now where more women are apt to have a job quicker than a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she may be the breadwinner, but it's okay. It doesn't affect your manhood. But I think a lot of dudes can't deal with that, so they feel like, well, she makes more money than me. This fucks with his ego. She because she makes more. A lot of people equate money with decision making. Because she makes more money, she has the power in this situation. Like a lot of people, they treat relationships like a tug of war. This is not a tug of war. If we're in love, why are we tugging at each other? Why are we boxing and fighting each other? And I think that a lot of times, because he, quote unquote, feels I guess declawed per se, he feels like, well, since I can't make more money than you, I punch you in the face to keep you in your place.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you talk about making money and equating that with decision making. Like I can remember when my grandfather, he used to drive buses in Chicago. He would always come home, he would bring his check home, hand the whole check over to my grandmother. And my grandmother would pay the bills, and my grandmother would make sure that everything around the house is straight. My grandmother, planned the vacations, and he went to work. He like, here, lady, do what you're gonna do. Do what you're gonna do, because he knew that she was better at that than he was. They understood that. In order for that home to function, this is the role that everybody played. Now, it might not have went into everybody's idea of how that would go on at their house, and that's another thing too. Folks get so caught up into how this ideal. People get caught up into their populist ideals as to how things should go, not necessarily taking into account, people's situations just being different from their own. Right. So when you say that, man, it just made me think about my granddad and my grandmother. Like, granddaddy just went, he worked, and he made more money. As a matter of fact, he was the sole breadwinner, but my grandmother made the decisions about how that money was being spent in that house.
And their relationship worked just fine. I think too many people also try to live their lives and their relationships by other people's standards. I tell people, I've been married, 12, 13 years. I tell people, whatever you think about marriage, forget it. Whatever your myths and people, fuck it. Because every marriage is different. Go into your marriage with an open slate and decide what works for you and your mate. I remember me and Roger first got married. I used to have this myth that you had to, quote unquote, be a perfect wife because you hear people, you talk to people, you try to find out, what are your expectations and things like that. And it's just one of those things where I thought I had to be perfect. So I would work all day, come home, cook, clean, wash, do all these other things I was supposed to do. But then when it came to intimacy, I was exhausted. Why? Because I had technically had like a 14 to 16 to 18 hour day,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm tired. So it affected things. And I got to it one day. I said, fuck it. You know what? I ain't washing clothes today. Fuck it, I'm not doing that today. Like it became more of a balance in the household. And it's not the fact that he didn't want to. I just thought that as a woman, not trying to be funny, that was my role. And
right.
Some women make an error by pushing men away and not allowing them to be more involved in the household, not allowing them to do things around the household and help with the kids, because society has taught us that's always a quote-unquote woman's role. And that one will kill herself trying to be perfect when that's not realistic.
It's funny when you even talk about men with kids, because, like, you think about like if a man wants to be a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
or like deal with kids in any sort of way, people look at him really funny. Like, what's wrong with you? Like,
Or the nursing
something
field.
ain't right. Like something ain't right. They give him the pedophilia kind of look. Like this dude ain't something ain't right with him if you really want to deal with these kids like that.
Right, that, and then also the nursing field, because that's a field dominated by women.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what's wrong with you? Why do you want to be a nurse? But it's just one of those things where it's almost like the reverse of it. Like if a woman wants to be a cop, it's like she gets the reverse of that. It's like, why do you want to go in this field dominated by men? But it's never to the point where her manlyhood is challenged. You know what I'm saying? But for a lot of dudes, if they want to teach, and teaching might just be in them, there's no rule that only say women can teach.
Yeah, I mean, like some of my favorite teachers, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Spencer, Mr. Jones. I still talk to Mr. Jones to this day. Mr. Gladney. I still talk to these men to this day.
Right. Some of the best teachers you could ever
Best teachers
have.
I had. Yeah.
Right.
So, you know what? I really do appreciate your time, Karen. We've come to the end of our time. I really do appreciate you being here. Let everybody know how they can get in touch with you over at the Black Guy Who Tips.
You can get in touch with me over at the Black Guy Who Tips at theblackguywhotips.com. Everything about us is over there. Our podcast, our premium shows, spin-off shows, all that is over there. For those of you that may be hearing my voice for the first time, my name is Karen. I'm one half of that podcast. I do it with my husband, Rod. We do it 5 days a week. And the motto of our show is "There's nothing wrong if it's funny." So I'm just letting you know that up front. We will joke and pick about all types of topics, appropriate or inappropriate. I'm just kind of forewarning you, because I think lately people be getting shocked and then writing these letters, and we're like, hey, you know what? We don't really think you a fan of the show, because if you was, you would kind of understand that we pick and we joke at stuff. And you can find me on Twitter at Say That Again, and you can find him on Twitter at Rodimus Prime.
All right, all right. Again, sister, I really do appreciate you coming over and having this discussion with me. I look forward to listening to the Black Guy Who Tips, and of course, I look forward to having you here on the Spann Report. Thanks you so much, sister.
Anytime.
All right, now, talk to you later.
Peace.